Keilim Perik Yudaled Mishnah Gimel, we carry on with our Kli Matris. First two Kelim are actually very simple, and I've looked at them before and cannot find what the Chiddush is. A kantor shel banoi, a banoi is a builder, and a kantor is some sort of enormous rod or pole which was used for a demolition job to smash bricks and cut through a wall. Made out of metal, and of course it's Tommy. Dikur shel charash, charash is a carpenter, and dikur is the same word as deker, it's some sort of pointed tool, like a trowel, used for making points, for digging into the gouging out things. And a metal tool, and of course, as the Mishnah says, Areilu Tmein, and that's quite a simple din. I've looked for a Chiddush here. I can't find one. But let's move on to the next one. Yistos Oyalim, the Yistos Hamashuchos Tmein. This is very interesting. He also did a peg, a tent peg. Yistos Oyalim are simply tent pegs stuck into the ground. Yistos Hamashucha is a Mashoyach, is somebody who measures, they used to measure as a surveyor, measure the size of a field, the length of land. How they did it was they had a rope of a specific length. They stuck a peg in the ground here, tied the rope, and then stretched the rope, put another peg in, and then they carried on doing these lengths of the rope using pegs stuck into the ground. That's how they measure the length of ground. And we're saying the pegs are tomei, and the obvious kasha is this seems to be a classic case of something which is mechubar lekarka. And we know, for instance, a hook stuck into the wall, made for sticking into the wall to hang a picture on, is not mekabel tumah. The Mefarshim say the difference is a peg in the wall to hang a picture or a coat hook is made to stay in that wall. It's not going to be moved. These pegs are moved in the sense of, in the cases of tents or measuring, they're actually moved the whole time. You get your tent in this place, then you move to another place, you measure this field, you measure another field. So although while it's doing its job, it's mechubar lekarka, but it's not made to be mechubar lekarka la'olam, it's made to be mitaltel, and it's moved with the measuring rope and with a tent, therefore it becomes bottle to the tent, and it's not only bottled to the tent, but it becomes what's intrinsically a kli hamitaltel, not a kli also lechabe imakarka. Mishnah carries on, shal shelet shal meshuchas tmei, again a simple din. This is the actual chain. Instead of using a rope, they sometimes used a chain of a specific length. And that chain, although again it's mechubar lekarka, it's lechera kal v'chomer, if already the peg is tomei kol sheken the chain. But the reason why the din of the chain is here is because of the next case, in contrast to ho'asuyo le'eitzim tahira. If a chain is made for wood, it's tahir. There's a few pshatim here. The Rambam, which is the first pshat in the Baal Tanura, is saying this is a chain made for tying wood. You have a bunch of firewood, you tie it together with a chain. Therefore, the Rambam uses the expression, the reason why the chain is tomei, is toer, because it's mateches hameshamesh eso eitz. It's auxiliary and secondary to the eitz, and of course the eitzim are not makabel tumah. Therefore, the chain is meshamesh the eitz, and therefore is toer. And the Mefarshim say, what that rule of eitz meshamesh is amateches, and mateches meshamesh is eitz is only when they're connected, when you've actually got an item, a keli, made up of different parts. But here, the chain is something separate. It's loose from the wood, and therefore you don't say the rules of mateches meshamesh is eitz. But the Mefarshim say the pshat in the Rambam here, the perish means that it actually doesn't have a shame bifnei atzmai, which is the basic rule of kli matras, because it's something which is always bottled to the bundle of wood to which it is attached, therefore hasn't got a shame bifnei atzmai. The other pshat is, if it's a chain just made for tying things together, that act of tying something together is actually not a tashmish choshuv. It's not doing anything. We had this before when we had, if you remember at the beginning of Perik Yud Base, when we dealt with a big metal block that keeps a prisoner in place. All it's doing is just keeping something in place. Therefore, that's not called a tashmish, and again fails the test of a kli matras sheyesh lo shem b'fnei atzmai. The Mishnah carries on, Shal sheres deli godol arba tvachim shal kotan asara. Here we've now hitting the first time the concept of yodos. With yodos, you've always got to be careful, because sometimes you have a yad, a length of a pole or a handle, and in this case you've got a chain of a bucket, and there's always a number given, so much is the yad, 4 tvachim, 10 tvachim. Sometimes these numbers can be a minimum and sometimes can be a maximum. Let me explain. In this Mishnah, it is certainly, in the first instance, the Mishnah is telling you that it is a maximum, which means with a big bucket, the shear is 4 tvachim. A big bucket is much heavier, and therefore you hold it much closer to the bucket, and therefore only the first 4 tvachim is considered to be a yad. The shal cotton, which is lighter, you can actually lift it and lower it, holding your hand a long way away from the bucket, and therefore the first 10 tvachim are all regarded to be a yad. This Mishnah means as follows: if the yad is longer than 4 tvachim, or longer than 10 tvachim, then it's the first 4 tvachim which is a yad and the rest isn't, or the first 10. Which means if the keli is tomei, holding the bucket more than 4 tvachim away will not make you tomei, or vice versa. If a person is tomei and he holds the chain more than 4 tvachim away, the bucket won't become tomei. That's how it seems most Mefarshim learn. The suffix in my mind is, sometimes when it says the word 4 tvachim asara, it could mean that you must have 4 tvachim of chain to be considered to be yad in the first place. It could be that if you just have a very short chain of 3 tvachim is so useless you can't do anything with it, so it hasn't even got a shem yad. So it could be both are correct. That means if it's 3 tvachim, nothing is tomei. If it's 5 tvachim, then the first 4 are a yad and the next one isn't. Let's move on with the Mishnah. Chamor shel napochin tomei. Napoch is a smith, and chamor is a big used word for a big object on which one sits or rides. And this is this is made out of metal. Although the Baal Tanura says the word or eights, the Mefarshim would say actually means a metal thing. It's the base of the bellows. Bellows is a big sort of pipe which you blow air onto the fire. The pipes sit on a metal base called the chamor, and this metal base is tomei. Again, I'm not quite sure why it is tomei. It's only acting as a base. That's not called a kli tashmish. And I've looked, I can't really explain this particular din. And we carry on with another interesting magerosh, also shiner b'seich hachor tamei. Magero is a saw. Of course, a saw is a kli matris and mekabel tam. However, you stick it into the door. Shasa shiner b'seich hachor. I'll try and show you a picture of this. Hold on a second. I wouldn't recommend that you do this at home. Right. Here's your saw, and then you stick it into the doorway at the top of the doorway. So it's wedged into the top of the doorway with the teeth facing downwards into the doorway. And the point of this being is that you can actually hold that the saw is now fixed, and therefore you can saw by actually moving the thing along the saw while the saw is being fixed. So you can actually still use the saw. And we have the rule that if you take a kli and you're mechaber it the karka, it's already a kli, and then you're mechaber it to the karka, if you remember, as long as you have not been mevatel the shem kli, you can still use the saw as it is. The fact that it's mechubar the karka doesn't make it toyer, and as the Mishnah says to me, it's still mekabel toma. However, asal melem maton lemala. If you turn it upside down, that means you fix it into the top of the door, and you turn it inwards so that the teeth don't face downwards. That's probably something your wife would prefer to hayra. Then of course you've been mevatel the shem of the saw because you fixed it to the karka and you've ruined its tashmish. The Mishnah says, all metal lids, all coverings and lids are Torah. We said this before, that lids don't have a purpose, a tashmish choshuv, therefore they're Torah. Chutz mishal meichem, unless it's the lid of a kettle, because obviously in those days the lids of a kettle, it was used as a clip, it's also used as something else, as a container. It was taken off the kettle and then it was used as a kitchen bowl of some sort. this rule of cholak yisuin Torah chutz mishal mechen, the word kol, a rule, and then it says chutz, is lav davka, because we had before, if you remember, in Perik 12, Yud Beis Mishnah Gimel, there was another type of lid there, a kisui tanishal roifim, also Tomei, because the lid was used by itself.